Long ago, in the heart of an African village called Omereche, there lay a river believed to house a powerful deity. This river was the lifeblood of the community, providing water for their crops and fish for their sustenance. The villagers believed the river's blessings were granted by the river god, whom they called Izmiri. Every year, they held a grand festival in honor of Izmiri, offering prayers, dances, and sacrifices to ensure the god's favor. The river was more than just a source of life, it was sacred. No one dared to cut the trees around it, nor did anyone fish without performing the necessary rituals. Tales of those who defied the river were whispered around fires at night, each story ending in tragedy. The village chief, or Konkwo, was the custodian of this sacred tradition. He often reminded the villagers, "The river is not ours. It belongs to Izmiri. To disturb it is to disturb the balance of our lives." Life continued peacefully until one fateful day, when outsiders arrived in the village with machines and blueprints. They came with promises of development, claiming they would build a modern town where the river stood. For the first time in decades, the peace of Omereche was under threat. The villagers gathered at the riverbank, murmuring prayers to Izmiri. They knew the river god would not take kindly to such disrespect. But could they stop the government, whose power seemed greater than theirs? Chief Okonkwo stood at the forefront, determined to protect the river at all costs. Little did they know, a storm was brewing, and Izmiri would soon reveal the consequences of defiance. The morning was calm, with the sound of birds chirping and the river flowing gently. Suddenly, the peace was shattered by the rumble of heavy trucks and the voices of government officials. The villagers gathered in confusion as men in suits stepped out, holding documents and pointing toward the sacred river. "We are here on behalf of the government," the leader of the officials announced. His voice was firm, carrying the weight of authority. "This river and its surrounding land have been marked for development. We plan to build roads, bridges, and modern facilities. It is for the progress of this village and the entire region." The villagers gasped in disbelief. Chief Okonkwo stepped forward, his face a mix of anger and determination. "This river is sacred," he said firmly. "It is not just water to us, it is the home of our god, Izmiri. Your machines cannot touch it." The officials exchanged glances, unimpressed by the chief's words. "With all due respect, Chief," the leader replied, "superstition has no place in progress. The government has made its decision." The villagers broke into murmurs, some praying aloud, while others begged the officials to reconsider. The elders pleaded with Chief Okonkwo to do something. He raised his hand to silence them, then turned to the officials. "If you disturb this river, Izmiri will show you why it is sacred," he said coldly. The officials laughed, brushing off his warning as mere folklore. They ordered the trucks to advance, marking the first step toward clearing the land. The villagers watched helplessly as the men began surveying the river. Though no one dared interfere directly, they all felt a growing sense of dread. It was only a matter of time before the river god made its displeasure known. The next morning, a bulldozer arrived at the riverbank. Its large metal frame glinted under the sun, casting an imposing shadow over the sacred waters. The villagers gathered again, their murmurs of prayer rising into the air like smoke from a smoldering fire. The driver, a burly man named Aid, climbed into the bulldozer, adjusting his hat. He looked at the villagers, who stood silently, their eyes filled with unease. The chief approached him, his voice calm but firm. "Son, do not disturb this river. What lies beneath is beyond your understanding. Walk away now, and save yourself." Ade smirked, brushing off the chief's words. "I have a family to feed," he replied, turning the ignition. "These are just stories to scare people. I'm here to work." As the bulldozer roared to life, the villagers began to chant. Their low, rhythmic voices carried a sense of urgency, as if they were calling upon unseen forces. Ade hesitated, his hands trembling on the controls. He glanced toward the river, where the surface seemed unnaturally still. He moved the bulldozer forward, its metal claws reaching for the first tree. Suddenly, the engine sputtered, then stopped. A cold wind swept through the area, sending chills down his spine. He looked at the villagers, who were staring intently at him, their chants growing louder. Sweat beaded on Ade's forehead. He felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as though unseen eyes were watching him. Unable to shake the feeling, he climbed down from the bulldozer and walked away without a word. The villagers sighed in relief, but their unease lingered. The river had been spared, for now. Yet deep within its depths, Izmir stirred, knowing the battle was far from over. Days later, a second bulldozer arrived at the riverbank, this time driven by a man named Bala. Unlike Ade, Bala was known for his boldness and lack of fear. As he descended from his truck, he glanced around at the villagers, their chants and murmurs unshaken. "Is this how you scare everyone?" he asked mockingly, gesturing at the silent crowd. "Well, you won't scare me. I've dealt with all kinds of nonsense in my work." Chief Okonkwo stepped forward again, his tone steady yet full of warning. "Bala, you may not fear us, but the river god is not one to mock. Turn back now before it is too late." Bala chuckled, waving him off. "I've heard enough of these stories. You're just afraid of change." He climbed into the bulldozer, his confidence unwavering. The engine roared to life, louder than before, as if defying the murmurs of the crowd. Bala pushed the machine forward, its massive metal blade ready to tear into the trees surrounding the river. But then, just as he approached the water's edge, the air grew thick and heavy. A strange sound emerged, a low hum, almost like the river was speaking. Bala paused, glancing around nervously. The villagers had stopped chanting, their eyes fixed on the river. The hum grew louder, echoing in Bala's ears. Suddenly, the bulldozer's engine faltered, and the machine shuddered violently. Bala's hands trembled as he fought to control it. A shadow passed over the water, dark and serpentine, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Bala felt his courage drain away. He leapt out of the bulldozer and ran, muttering prayers he hadn't said in years. The villagers watched him flee, but their relief was short-lived. They knew it was only a matter of time before someone more reckless came along. By now, word had spread of the strange occurrences at the river. Most drivers refused the job, terrified by the stories of Ade and Bala. But when the government offered double the pay, a man named Musa volunteered. Unlike the others, Musa was a proud skeptic, known for his boldness and sharp tongue. When he arrived at Omereche, he ignored the villagers' warnings. "Superstitions," he muttered as he climbed out of his truck. The villagers gathered again, their prayers rising in unison. Chief Okonkwo approached Musa, his expression grave. "Young man, This is not just about work. This is about your life. Do not disturb the sacred river." Musa laughed, brushing past him. "Old man, save your warnings for those who believe in fairy tales. I've seen rivers, mountains, and forests. None have scared me." With that, he climbed into the bulldozer. The engine roared as the machine moved toward the riverbank. The villagers began chanting again, their voices a blend of fear and desperation. Musa smirked, unfazed. The first tree fell with a loud crash, its branches scattering into the sacred water. Musa pushed the bulldozer deeper, ignoring the strange stillness that now surrounded him. The river's flow seemed to slow, and the air grew heavy, but Musa pressed on. Suddenly, he froze. Just ahead, something massive moved in the water. At first, he thought it was a log. Then it rose, a giant snake, its scales shimmering in the dim sunlight. Its eyes, cold and piercing, locked onto him. Musa screamed, leaping out of the bulldozer and into the river. The water engulfed him, and everything went dark. When Musa opened his eyes, he was no longer on the riverbank. He stood face to face with the largest snake he had ever seen. Musa's heart pounded in his chest as he stood before the enormous serpent. The river's waters swirled around him, their movement slow and deliberate, as if the river itself was breathing. The snake's massive body coiled in the water, its eyes gleaming with an ancient intelligence. Musa tried to speak, but his throat was dry, and his words came out as whispers. What are you?" Musa stammered, his voice trembling. The snake's eyes never wavered, and then, to Musa's horror, it opened its mouth and spoke, not with a hiss, but with a deep, resonant voice that echoed in his mind. "I am Izmiri, the river god. You have disturbed the sacred waters of my home. Why have you come?" Musa stumbled back, his legs weak beneath him. I'm just doing my job. They sent me here to clear the land for the government," he said quickly, his words tumbling out in a panic. "You dare defile my river for the sake of greed," the river god's voice boomed, sending ripples through the water. The air grew thick with tension. Musa's eyes widened in fear as the water around him began to churn violently. The serpent's massive form glided closer, its scales glistening in the dim light. Musa's body trembled, and he fell to his knees, his face pale. "Please forgive me," he begged, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't know it was sacred." The snake's eyes softened slightly. "You knew, but you chose to ignore the warnings," Izmiri responded calmly. "The river is not to be toyed with. You have broken the balance." Musa could feel the weight of his mistake pressing on him. He had underestimated the power of the sacred river and its guardian. But there was no turning back now. The river god continued, "For your disrespect, you will pay the price." What will be the fate of Musa? Will the river god show mercy, or will Musa face a grim end at the hands of this mystical being? The tension rises as the water ripples with an otherworldly force, and the snake glowing eyes pierce through Musa's soul. The next part of this story promises suspense, drama, and a twist that will leave you stunned. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with your loved ones. Until we meet again, take care.